these four companies have enormous power. I could argue that these four companies rival Standard Oil and some of the trusts that took place at the beginning of the 20th century. And if we step back for a moment, and some of your viewers may recall, my background was as a venture capitalist, as an entrepreneur. And if we've looked at just the fact that 50% of the new jobs created in the last 30 years have come from startups in our country, yet venture deals are down about 40% since 2015. I know many of my friends in the venture business say, there's no way to go to scale anymore. Your only exit is not going public. Your exit is selling to one of these big platforms. And I actually think their size stymie a bit of competition. Now, it's a complicated world, in a world where data is king. Data is the new oil. If you don't aggregate enough data, it is tough to get to scale. But I think some of the CEO's testimony was a little bit self-serving.
Well, Senator, my question is, to the degree it sounds like you're in the camp of breaking them up, the question is, how would you do it? And if you were to do it, what do you think the result is going to be? And the reason I say that is because if you were to break up Amazon, ostensibly, one of the things we've talked about is consumer prices have come down, or at least it appears from the outside as if consumer prices have come down on virtually all of the products that these types of companies offer. And so, how much more do you think the price is going to? Are we now? It's not about whether the price goes up; it's about how much the price goes down. And do you think that would actually happen?
Well, I think first of all, to decide, American antitrust has always been about price to consumer only. I'm not sure whether that is the only gauge we should be judging these companies on. There's concepts like monoscopy and overall control of the market that the Europeans have, and I'm not in the break them up category yet, because these are all global companies, and frankly, to have them replaced by Alibaba or Baidu or Tencent, Chinese companies may not be the better alternative. What I would rather start with, keeping breakup as a reserve option, is what can we do to add more competition? I was a telecom guy. There used to be a great deal of concentration in telecom until, one, the government took action in terms of breaking up AT&T, but two, the whole idea of number portability. Back in the 90s, it used to be really hard to move from one telco to another. If we had data portability, if you're tired of how you're being treated with YouTube or Facebook, you ought to be able to easily move your data to a new platform and still have it interoperable with those of your friends who remain on Facebook. I think we ought to have more transparency. I think you ought to be able to know what your data is worth on a either monthly or quarterly basis, so we get rid of this misnomer that somehow these services are free. They take your data, right. They monetize it. There's nothing wrong with that, but we ought to at least know as consumers how much that data is worth. I think we ought to recognize that there are a series of practices, deceptive practices, frankly, using dark patterns and other technology tools that these companies use to get our data, oftentimes unknowingly, that, again, there ought to be more transparency. I think there are a series of pro-competition rules of the road that I would much rather use first before I immediately default to the breakup camp.